Welcome everyone to the May 20th, 2024 Special Board of Education meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:30 p.m. Roll call with us this evening is myself, Jennifer Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Krasnoff, Mrs. Rinaldi, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Guernsey. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for everyone being accommodating and being able to make this special meeting. Our first business item for tonight is non-residential renewable energy solutions projects for Riverfield Elementary School. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the non-residential renewable energy solutions Riverfield Elementary School project agreement between United Illuminated Company and the Fairfield Board of Education. Can I get a motion, please? Motion made by Mrs. Guernsey, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. Okay, who would like to kick us off in Mr. Papa George or Mr. Morbido to introduce this item?
Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you for making the accommodations to be here this evening. I'm going to real quick give you a little bit of a background for the new board members and some information, and then Mr. Morbido is on as well, and he has more detail or can answer any questions about this project, these two projects moving forwards. The brief history I have is that a few years back at a Board of Finance meeting, there was some discussion about solar, how to get solar back, we put a stop to solar projects because there was a question about whether they were worth it, whether they were working out. The auditor did an audit and it was not clear at that time. So there was kind of moratorium put on solar. And since then, I've asked Sal, who's been renamed a few years back also as our energy director, to work with the town. At the time, it was Mr. Flynn, Tom Bremer, who he worked with to come up with an alternative solution so we can get solar projects back at the school sites. So what you have before you tonight is an agreement that would allow us to do a straight out lease of the roof spaces at the two sites, Burr and Riverfield, for a solar company to add solar to those roofs. It's a straight out lease agreement. We're leasing the space to them, and they would come back and pay the monthly fee for that. It's straightforward. There's no delivery charges anymore. There's no PPMs anymore. It's just here's how much we're going to give you per lease. And the reason you don't have those numbers in your backup is because this project still has to go out to town bodies, and it still has to go out to bid and follow our specs. And we get to choose what solar company we would choose to put the solar on the roof for the 20-year lease agreement. I think that's a pretty good summary. If there's questions, as I said, Sal is on board and he can answer questions. He's been more indeed day-to-day with this project.
Thank you, Mr. Papa George. Mr. Krasnoff.
I apologize because I have quite a few questions. I am fairly familiar with lease agreements from the residential space, but not necessarily in the commercial space or school space. So we don't know how much we're getting in terms of a kickback, or it looks like from the agreement it's not going to be like a rebate or a cost reduction of our current use. It's just going to be a flat fee of some sort.
Yeah, that is correct, sir. What we used to do, there was two ways that the RECs could be applied for. They could be applied for as what's called a buy-all, which is the one that's before you, which is basically leasing the roof. The other one was net metering, where we agreed to buy the power, and it got a little bit more complicated. Those are the ones that we've historically done. As Angelus explained, there was an audit. The Board of Finance made a statement not to proceed with any more PV projects until the calculus of the savings was determined. And we pursued that for a while. And the buy all, this came to us from our Jeff Mayer, who is our energy consultant when we buy electricity from Constellation Power and our gas supply and things like that. He was the one that brought forth this buy all lease agreement. So this was, I want to say, late summer, beginning of fall last year. The new opportunity to apply for the NRES program was coming up. What you have before you is we had applied for 4 locations. We won on 2 of them. It's a competitive competition to get the NRECs. What we won is the NRECs. We're contracting to proceed to a project that will use the NRECs. So that's what this agreement's about. We will go out to bid. We'll have competitions from various energy companies, energy savings companies. And what we get in return, one company might say, I'll give you $22,000 for the lease on Burr. Another company might tell us 25. So we're going to have hopefully multiple bids on this. So when you're asking how much are we going to make, we don't know until we bid it out. If the bid doesn't come in favorable to us, we feel it's not favorable, we can turn around and just turn the RECs back in and say, no, thank you. We don't want to proceed with that.
What happens if we need to remove the panels for any reason? In a lot of the lease agreements I've seen, it's usually at the cost of the leasee, not the leaseor.
Yeah, it depends on what the issue is. So, and this has come up, and frankly, it's coming up right now in the HVAC IAQ projects. There are some components that need to be relocated, and that's a cost to the town. The leasee, they're happy right where they are, and we might want two, 3, 4, half dozen panels moved to a different location. They'll tell us what electrician they're comfortable using, and we'll use that electrician and move their equipment accordingly, and it's on our dime. And that gets built into the contract when that's all negotiated out. Those kind of.
And that would also go for the roof, or any damage done by the panels on the roof, or any of that would still be our cost to absorb, or we would have to negotiate that depending on what caused it.
So what happens is we typically have a fully ballasted or almost fully ballasted system. So it's not penetrating our roof. We try to avoid penetrations in the roofs. So we've had PV systems on our roofs for going on larger systems for 8 years. We had some demonstration units that go back all the way to the early 2004 from what I recall. And they're never really the source of the leak. It's a failure of the roof system. And we haven't really had any underneath the PV systems. So, we wouldn't put a system on an old roof because we don't want the roof to expire underneath the panels. So that's why we picked the Riverfield. That's why we picked the Burr. They got very young roofs. We just replaced them back in 2019 and just last summer for Riverfield. So they're young roofs, and they're performing well, and they're capable of handling a system on them.
Do we have any idea that the scope of the project, or that would be part of the bid process?
Well, the Burr system can fit what this consultant that filled out the forms, Davis Hill, they've done probably about half of the systems that we already have on our school roofs. They said the burst can support a 300 kW system. The Riverfield can support about a 200 kW system, given the equipment on the roof and free space and shadows and all that good stuff. So we have an idea how big somebody can go for it.
And then in terms of that, I know other states are starting to be much more strict with solar. California, for example, due to fire safety. Is this something we've talked to the fire department at all to make sure they're okay with us putting this many panels on a roof?
Yeah, they become aware of the system. There's signage that actually says where the disconnects are. Problem with it does become a safety issue because the inverters, it's producing electricity, so the inverters are hot, so they have to be careful about that. But there's signage that's put out on the building that tells them where the disconnects are and how to handle that. So that's part of the when it's built, the permitting, the building permitting process.
And just a few more quick questions. I know I've had a lot. Town attorneys reviewed this already, or that would go after we approve it before we put it out to bid?
The true contract. This is for, like, as I told, this has not been reviewed by town attorney. This is just saying that we understand we won the competition for two of the locations that we submitted applications for. Once we go out to bid, there would be a contract that would be negotiated, and the town attorney would be involved with that before we actually sign. Yes, we're giving up our roofs for 20 years, and here's what you owe if you cause a leak at one of your penetrations, and here's what we owe you if we have to turn off the system for a month, so on and so forth.
The last big question is, it's kind of hard to sort through this on exactly. You keep saying we won. Like, I don't quite understand what we won. Are they funding the lease of the panels? Or like, is there something specific that we're gaining up front that we already know about? That would help us at least to make a decision going forward of, let's pursue this, or we need more questions answered before we go down the road.
So what we've won is, if you go to page 3, halfway down the sheet, you'll see purchase price of energy or RECs if buy all, $199.82 per megawatt hour. That's the renewable energy credit that is being given out or being given to the developer, to the ESCO that develops the PV system. They get those credits from the state. Every month when one of the lines in your electric bill, and everybody's electric bill goes to a fund that pays for all of this. So from this, the state collects from all the ratepayers a fee for programs like this, energy conservation programs like this. The company that we ultimately contract with will be assigned the renewable energy credits, and that's how they bring down the cost. That's how it's part of the calculus for figuring out how they're making a profit on the system. It's one of the credits that they get, along with tax credits and various things like that. They also will negotiate a price for their the electricity that they produce will be put back to the grid, will be given back to UI. We won't be using it. It won't be running through our building. It'll go out to the grid. and could go to your house, go to a factory down the street, what have you. And they'll
Okay.
negotiate a purchase price from the utility companies for that. And at the end of the day, part of their cost is what they can afford to pay us for a lease. So it's a business enterprise, and that's one of the revenue sources that they count on.
Because I will be honest, that is one of my biggest concerns. Just knowing again how it works in the residential world. A lot of times these companies come in, they take the credits, they reap most of the benefits, and the people that did the lease are actually the ones kind of left holding the bag. And I'm fearful that we're going down that road, and maybe it's a little different in the scenario. It's just so far everything you're telling me is very similar to what I've seen in the residential world, and it's a little bit scary, to be very honest with you.
Okay, thank you, David. If you don't mind, I'm going to let Mr. Asa go
sure.
for a second. Thank you. Mr. Asa?
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, to Mr. Krasnoff's point, I think what he's describing is what we've currently been doing with the current contracts in our systems, correct, Sal, where we're getting a discounted price, and where this is truly, we are in essence, by doing this, becoming a landlord for our roof to a company to then potentially make money. But our revenue would be fixed in an agreement. It wouldn't be based on their profitability or anything. We would be signing a 20-year agreement to give them our roof so they could mount panels and basically profit off it on our roof for a rent, correct?
That's a very apt description of what this would end up being.
Okay, and that differs from what we do now in the past with the systems, whereas the current systems are an agreement that we have to put on our properties, and in exchange, similar to the residential situation, we are guaranteed a discounted rate for X number of years, correct?
Correct. We historically have done power purchase agreements.
Okay.
This is not a power purchase agreement.
And so not being a power purchase agreement, I will just say I am adamantly against putting something on our roof and committing to a long-term lease with a company that could make a significant profit and it doesn't increase or isn't variable. I understand the benefit of the current systems because in theory, we should be guaranteed a lower rate than the market rate for the next 20 years or whatever. But there's also been a lot of discussion from other town bodies with how well have these systems performed, and is the rate of return really that beneficial, and locking into a 20-year agreement. So for this, my biggest concern is not knowing what that revenue is. And I will tell you, if it is even close to $25,000, I don't think we should even be considering this. If you were telling me we were going to get 150 grand, 200 grand a year on a revenue line that would offset our budget, I would be intrigued to learn more. But if we don't have those numbers, I don't see how we can, in good faith and conscience, move forward with this.
Well, the numbers that rough numbers would be for Burr would be something on the $23,000 range. Riverfield would be $12,000. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
per
so
year.
We put a brand
for 20 years.
We put a brand new roof on Riverfield this year, and I understand that we're saying that we're not going to penetrate it or anything. But for that money and what we spent on the roof, this is an absolute hard no in my mind, based on what you just said. And I appreciate you giving us the ballpark estimates. They're not guaranteed. But
that if I can interrupt, but that's just one vendor. That's why you go out to bid.
Well, understand, but we're not going to go from 12 to 50. I mean, in a competitive bid.
I don't know that. You can have you might have a strong confidence in that, but until
what did we pay for the roof at Riverfield? I don't remember. I don't recall what we just did this last year.
Riverfield was around number 1.5 million.
Okay.
Sherman
So
was 1.9.
yeah, I mean, even if we weren't putting this in the bank in theory, but if we were doing 20 years at 50,000, that I'm looking at the numbers and we wouldn't even be, yeah. All right. You gave me enough information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Flynn.
I just have a few quick questions, but I think I so far kind of agree with the sentiments of my fellow board members that the cost benefit of this just doesn't seem too advantageous. But did you mention at all, is there any impact to the warranties on our roof? As Mr. Aitha said, these are $1.5 million agreements. And if we do puncture for some reason, does that impact our current warranty? Can you speak to any of that side of this?
Sure. So what happens, and it's part of the construction process, is that they go to the warrant, they go to the manufacturer, and there's a department that reviews how they're going to build the system, and gives them certain instructions on how they construct the PV system, the ballasting system, how they protect they have to do certain things to maintain the warranty. And that's done in cooperation with the roof manufacturer that holds the warranty, whatever entity that is. So that's a normal process.
Okay. And then just for myself, you said that these discussions began in the late summer, early fall. I wasn't on the board at that time. Did this go through any of the facilities committee, the finance committee, any kind of there? For process kind of just to maybe, this just seems like this is coming without a lot of financial implications. Like in the process of this, did this go through any other bodies?
If Angelus brought it through the facilities committee, Angelus would need to speak to that. I'm not aware of that. But it didn't go to Board of Select. It didn't go through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, RTM, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. And then just one last one. You said there were no consequences once we go out to bid. Can you just confirm? So if we were to go out to, if this was to be voted on by a consensus of the board and these RFPs came back with these low numbers that don't really warrant, there would be no consequences for the district to not move forward?
No. We either accept it or we don't. That's why we're like the other ones were.
If we say no, this company or these credit, I'm just not super familiar with this language. And when you're looking at the green energy, but we won't have any kickback or consequences from the state or anything. I just want to make clear.
No, what would happen is that the NRECs that were assigned to us or awarded to us in this would go back into the pool, just like the other two sites that we submitted on. We were on standby, so we're on standby to see if somebody else accepts their recs. And then
so we basically go to the back of the line if we don't move forward.
Exactly. I
just want to be clear because that is a consequence. Now we may choose not, but that's something just to be mindful of for board members to know. Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey.
Thanks so much for sharing this information with us. I share the sentiments with the rest of the board members who spoke, and this is not something I'm comfortable with. And I just wanted to give one piece of feedback. This is the kind of project that I would like to punt discussion to either facilities or finance committee. And I think that would have been a good starting place, or even if it was brought to the board. And I know how much work that goes into writing these grants. And I just want to make sure that our resources of time are used wisely. So if there are projects like this in the future and you can bring them to us ahead of time, I mean, I don't know how this vote will go today, but I'm not going to be supporting it. And, if this is something that could have saved you time, I think that's something important to think about. What kinds of projects and grants should you be bringing to either the board or one of our subcommittees prior to applying? And not to hold you back from anything, but we're having this meeting tonight. I'm hearing the details of this project, and the more I hear, the less I like it, frankly. But also being a big supporter of sustainable projects and, solar usage and all that. So it's like, I'm interested in the idea, but not in this form, and certainly would want to have it further vetted by one of our subcommittees. So that's my feedback today. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thanks. I think I'm pretty much with where all the other speakers have been so far. It's a lot of risk for very little return. 20 years is a lot of risk. I guess, going with something that Mrs. Guernsey just said, I'm theoretically in favor of renewable energy and solar power. I think that we may need to take steps to try to jumpstart the process with the town, because that's something that came up in Board of Finance and at Town Hall, and seems to just be stuck in the mud nowhere. And I think we need much better numbers on it just in general. And I hesitate to try to leapfrog ahead of where the town is on this. And I know the town is not really moving on this, but I think that we need to move together. And in this particular instance, it's too much caution for me to vote yes on this.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Krasnoff, I'm just going to ask a couple myself, and then I'll come back to second rounds, okay? Mr. Borbito, I just have a quick questions on the actual documents in front of us tonight that we're voting on,
Okay.
if you will. So I know this is an agreement between you and the Board of Ed. It says, however, the address and website are the town and not Board of Ed. Can you explain why that is?
It matches what's on the UI bills. So the town owns the building, and the UI bills are read that way or written that way. But the benefit would be negotiated at the end, because we're I'm trying to find the exact words. We're the entity that pays for it. So we're the ultimate. We would be the beneficiary of the lease at the end of the day if we chose to go forward, which it's not sounding like we are, but that would ultimately, the lease payments would come to the board, and that would be worked out in the contract negotiation part once a bidder was selected.
Okay, thank you. So that's my next question is who does the check actually come from? Does the check come from UI, or does it come from the solar bidder?
It would come from the entity that builds the PV system. It's a little bit convoluted, because what this is talking about is where the renewable energy credit goes. That credit that was won goes to the developer of the PV project.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the lease payment for using our roofs comes to the Board of Ed, comes to Fairfield Public Schools.
So we don't know at this point. I'm sorry, Mr. Asa, did you have a follow-up to that?
Oh, no, I would say, I know you had some questions for the record, but it's clear that there's a majority of no. So I was just wondering if we could put this to bed.
Yeah, I just want to ask a couple follow-ups, just so it actually might help the future conversations.
Thank you.
Can you help me understand the Riverfield item where there was a beneficiary listed on that, and why we would propose to agree to do that?
No, well, that should have been filled out the same way as the Burr, where it said none or non-applicable. I forgot what wording they used.
Okay, so we didn't intend to do
because,
that. Okay.
Yeah, because once it went out to bid, that form would be reworked out and worked out to the winner of the bid. The ESCO that we're working with.
Okay. All right. And my last question is, I know that you worked on this with previous administration, Mr. Brummer, but have you worked on this and brought anyone else in the current up to speed in a similar position for the town side? Is that Adam Tulin, or?
I think he was aware of it. Well, he was aware of it because we used Davis Hill to do the paperwork for that, to make the application. But they were not, they weren't a lock, so it is
Okay.
what it is.
All right. So yeah, I share Mr. Peterson's thinking around this and going through, other town boards, our committees, kind of vetting, seeing where everyone is right now on these PPEs versus the way that we're doing it right now. I don't like to throw away a potential $700,000 based on the numbers that you said over 20 years. But again, that's not guaranteed either. So yeah, just until we can loop in some other people, I think I would be far more comfortable. Mr. Krasnov, did you have a last follow-up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a way to do this and instead make the buildings like net zero with the electric instead of going down this road of leasing. Is there any ability to do something like that and possibly give them extra electric? Something like that I would entertain.
So if you want, I can just jump in. I know we haven't really officially had any kickoffs yet, but we will be bringing to the board hopefully before the end of the season until summer. But our contract with Synergistics, so that is something that we can work with them to look at down the road. And we can also work with them for other solar opportunities, as they do have the experience and the knowledge moving forwards with how to evaluate, how to work with them, and maybe even have them come to the table with our conversations with the town about moving forwards with solar.
Okay, and just before I go to a vote, I don't know, Mr. Testani, if you're on there, did you have anything you wanted to add or before we go to a vote on this item?
The only thing I would add is after all the questions have been asked and answered, I don't see the risk reward benefit to the Board of Education on this project. I just have some serious concerns, and unfortunately it sounds like the state is moving in this direction for some reason, and it just raises a lot of red flags for me. It just doesn't make sense for something to enter into now.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Mrs. Ronaldo, you didn't have your hand up. You didn't have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We've got the motion on the table and the second. So I will take it back to the board. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Krasnov, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Rinaldi, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Guernsey, and Mrs. Flynn. And there's no one else for abstention. So motion fails 0-6-0. Thank you. So wait, is there 6 of us on? Yes, right? 7. Sorry, 7. 7. Thank you. Thank you. Just want to make sure for Mrs. Guernsey. Thank you. All right. So I mean, technically I'll read for, do we even want to go to B? Or should I just not even move the question?
I wouldn't move the question, in my opinion.
I don't know if you need that, Mr. Papa George or Mr. Morabito, as in like we've actually applied for something and the board has rejected it. Is there, do you want us to vote on it?
I think if you could do it quick, you might as well do it just to make it formal.
Okay. All right. Non-residential renewable energy solutions project for Burr Elementary School. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the non-residential renewable energy solutions Burr Elementary School project agreement between United Illuminating Company and Fairfield Board of Education. I will make the motion to start, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. Any discussion, any questions? No. All right, back to the board. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Krasnov, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Rinaldi, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Flynn. Abstention 0. Motion fails 0-7-0. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn, please. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Peterson. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously 7-0. All right. Thank you guys for explaining this and bringing it to us. Appreciate it. Very, interested in going forward with conversations with the town. And as we proceed on this, as I know people are definitely interested in projects such as this, just in a way that we could have more certainty around them. So thank you everyone for your time and making for tonight's special meeting. I appreciate it very much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night, everybody.
Have a good
Love.
night.
Thank
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.